She loved him despite his poverty, but it cost her everything. Welcome to our story. Please subscribe to our channel. It truly means a lot to us as we bring you powerful African love and betrayal stories every week. Now let's begin. Amelia Johnson had everything people prayed for: money, respect, a corner office on the 12th floor of a glass building in the heart of Victoria Island. The kind of life others measured theirs against. A name that carried weight in the boardrooms of Lagos. A wardrobe lined with Italian shoes and crisp suits that smelt faintly of success. At 32, she was the woman other women pointed at and whispered about. That's Amelia Johnson. Did you know she closed a contract worth billions last year? Men glanced at her twice, once with admiration, and again with intimidation. She was elegance wrapped in ambition, grace softened by hard work. But when she lay awake at night, staring at the crystal chandelier above her bed, she felt the weight of a silence that no success could fill. Her friends never understood it. What else do you want, Amelia? You're beautiful, rich, well-respected. At your age, all that is left is a man. A very rich man. The words haunted her. They came from everywhere, in her mother's careful sighs during Sunday calls, in the loud teasing of colleagues, in the side eyes of church aunties who insisted that a woman's glory was incomplete without a husband. Amelia learned to laugh it off, but inside, she carried a longing that surprised even her. She didn't want another business partner or a man who measured his worth in cars and contracts. She wanted something rarer, love in its raw, unpolished form. Someone who would hold her when the city lights dimmed, who would strip away the layers of wealth and see her as just a woman with a fragile, beating heart. Her closest friend, Nkechi, reminded her every other week that she was being unrealistic. Amelia, Nkechi had said just that morning, leaning across their cafe table, don't be foolish. Love is sweet, yes, but love without money is suffering, and suffering is not romantic. Amelia smiled faintly, stirring her cappuccino though she had no taste for it. So love doesn't matter anymore, just money. Nkechi raised an eyebrow, her gold bangles clinking. Money first. Love will follow. Trust me, you don't want to be the one feeding a grown man. The words pricked her, not because Amelia agreed, but because she feared what would happen if she didn't. Back at her office that evening, rain pounded against the wide glass windows, streaking the city into blurred lights. Amelia paused in her work, staring at the storm. Lagos was slowing down, cars crawling like ants on the wet roads, pedestrians huddled under umbrellas. She pressed her fingers to her temple, her head aching from spreadsheets and endless negotiations. To the world, she was a lioness, confident, commanding, untouchable. But at that window, with the storm clawing at the glass, Amelia Johnson looked like what she secretly was, a woman who had everything except the one thing her heart craved, and she was delusional enough to believe she might still find it. The rain did not respect anyone. It slapped across windscreens, splattered against faces, and turned the tarred roads of Lagos into mirror-black rivers. Amelia gripped her steering wheel tighter as her car crawled across Eco Bridge, her wipers fighting to clear the sheets of water. She had just left a late dinner meeting at Le Méridien, an elite restaurant where chandeliers dripped from the ceiling and every plate looked like a painting. As she walked out earlier that night, she had noticed the doorman. He was tall, broad-shouldered, standing in the rain with an umbrella, opening doors for clients, with a stiff politeness that looked almost painful. His uniform was a size too small, his shoes worn out at the heel, but his posture was proud. He hadn't looked at her twice, although most men usually did. She had admired that. Now, halfway across the bridge, her car gave a violent jerk. The dashboard lights blinked, the engine made a weird sound, and then there was silence. No, 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 not now, Amelia whispered, twisting the ignition again. Yet nothing. Behind her, a horn blared. Then another. Within seconds, the chaos of Lagos descended on her, truck drivers raining curses at her, headlights flashing, angry Danfo drivers swerving around her stalled car. Her pulse quickened. Rain hammered the roof like stones. For the first time in years, Amelia felt small and powerless. Few minutes later, there came a knock. It was sharp, steady, and deliberate against her window. She turned her head and froze. It was him, the doorman from Le Méridien restaurant. His uniform jacket was gone now, replaced by a plain shirt plastered to his chest by rain. His short hair glistened with water, his jawline sharp in the dim streetlight. He bent slightly, his face calm despite the storm raging around them. "Madam," his voice was deep and steady. "Let me help you." Amelia hesitated, her hand hovering over the lock. In Lagos, opening your door to a stranger was a gamble. But something in his tone, not pleading, not aggressive, just certain, eased her fear. She pressed the unlock button. Within minutes, he waved two nearby street boys over, and together they pushed the heavy car to the side of the road. Amelia sat stiff in the driver's seat, her heart thudding as the car rolled to safety. He lifted the bonnet with practiced hands. Rain dripped from his face as he bent over the engine, his fingers moving like someone who had done this 100 times before. "Your alternator belt is loose," he said, his voice raised slightly over the storm. "I can adjust it now, but you will need to change it soon." Amelia leaned forward, studying him through the curtain of rain. There was nothing hurried about him, no attempt to impress. Just calm focus, a man who knew what he was doing. His fingers, though rough and scarred, worked with skill. "Try it," he finally said a few minutes later, stepping back. Amelia turned the key. The engine roared back to life. Relief flooded her chest. She exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping her lips. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice soft, but full of sincerity. He shook his head, droplets of rain scattering from his jaw. "No need, madam. Just be safe." She opened her purse automatically. "At least, let me give you something." But he lifted a hand, his wet palm glistening. "I don't want money for this, ma." That pride, that quiet dignity. It startled her. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the successful woman, dry and elegant even in distress, and the soaked doorman, with a jaw set and eyes unreadable. The city roared around them, but something passed between them that neither could name. Amelia reached into her bag, pulled out a business card, and pressed it into his wet palm. "If you ever need anything, call me." He looked down at the card as though it weighed 1,000 pounds. Then he tucked it carefully into his pocket, nodded once, and turned, disappearing into the sheets of rain. Amelia sat behind the wheel, her engine humming, her fingers trembling on the leather. She didn't even know his name. But she knew this, for the first time in years, her heart felt awake. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time Amelia reached her apartment in Ikoyi. The city was quiet now, its chaos muted by the heavy clouds still hanging above. She parked her car in the garage, but even after she slipped off her heels and poured herself a glass of water, her mind refused to rest. She kept seeing his face. The way the water ran down his jaw, the quiet certainty in his eyes, the way he had turned down her money as if it was an insult. Men in her world never refused money. The card she had given him felt like a foolish impulse now. Perhaps he had tossed it into a gutter the moment he walked away. Perhaps she would never see him again. Still, she couldn't shake the strange ache his memory left behind. David lay on his narrow mattress in the small room he rented, in Ajagunal, staring at the ceiling fan that barely stirred the humid air. His shirt was still damp, his shoes squelched from the storm, but none of that bothered him. His mind was trapped on the woman from the bridge, Amelia Johnson. That was the name on the card he had slipped carefully into his wallet. He had recognized her when her car broke down. He had seen her earlier that evening at Le Meridian restaurant, sweeping past him, head held high as she laughed with two men in suits. She had looked untouchable then, the kind of woman men like him only opened doors for. And yet, tonight, in the storm, she had looked at him as if he was more than a shadow in her world. He closed his eyes, the memory of her voice replaying in his mind. "If you ever need anything, call me." The following evening, Amelia stepped out of her office building just as the sun was sinking, staining the sky with pink and gold. She was unlocking her car when she heard a voice behind her. "Madam." She turned sharply, and there he was. David stood at a respectful distance, his shirt dry this time, his posture straight, though there was a hint of unease in his eyes. He held her business card in his hand like proof that he wasn't trespassing. Amelia's brows lifted in surprise. "You?" "Yes, ma'am." He cleared his throat. "I just wanted to return this." He held out the card. She frowned, stepping closer. "Return it? Why?" "I don't belong in your world," he said simply, his voice low. "I don't want to disturb you." Amelia studied him. The roughness of his hands, the weariness in his eyes, the humility in his posture. And beneath it, a pride that was not arrogance but armor. She smiled faintly. "What's your name?" He hesitated, then said, "David. David Okoro." "David." She repeated it softly, tasting the sound. "Well, David, if I gave you that card, it wasn't by mistake. I don't hand out my number to every man that fixes my car." His eyes blinked with surprise. "I wasn't expecting anything, Ma." "Good." Amelia's smile widened, her voice firm but warm. "Because I'm not offering anything. I'm offering friendship." For a long moment, the silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Then David nodded slowly, slipping the card back into his pocket. "I don't know why, madam, but I believe you." "Don't call me madam," Amelia said gently. "Call me Amelia." The way his lips shaped her name, almost reverently, sent a small shiver down her spine. And just like that, the first wall between their worlds shattered. Amelia was the one who suggested it first. "Let's get something to eat," she said, standing beside her car, her voice casual but her eyes steady on his. David blinked, startled. He had come to return her card again. Pride had pushed him that far. But somehow the conversation had turned, and now this woman was looking at him as though it was the most natural thing in the world to ask a restaurant doorman to dinner. "I don't think that's a good idea," he muttered, glancing around as if the whole world was watching. "People will see you with me." Amelia smiled faintly. "And what will they say?" "That I was hungry and decided to eat with a friend." "Friend," David repeated, the word tasting strange in his mouth. No one like her had ever called him that. "Yes," she said firmly. "Friend." They ended up at a small roadside suya spot in Suralere. Amelia had insisted here? David asked, incredulous. "Yes, here." Amelia replied, already stepping out in her cream blouse and slim trousers. "Don't tell me you're ashamed of suya, David." He laughed then, shaking his head, the sound warm and surprising even to himself. "No, Amelia. I grew up on suya." They sat on a wooden bench under a blinking yellow bulb, while the vendor fanned the grill, the air, thick with smoke and spice. Amelia leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, her braids catching the light. "You know," she said, tearing a piece of suya with her teeth, "I have eaten in Paris, London, Dubai, and still, nothing beats Nigerian suya." David watched her, his lips twitching. "You don't look like someone who eats food with her hands." Amelia licked the pepper from her fingers and grinned. "That's because you don't know me yet." For a moment, David forgot she was Amelia Johnson. At this moment, she was just Amelia, laughing with suya pepper dust on her lips, her eyes shining in the glow of the suya stand. Something fluttered in his chest, something he had buried beneath years of struggle and disappointment. "Why me?" he asked quietly, almost to himself. "You could have any man. Men who wear suits, men who drive cars better than yours." Amelia's smile softened. "Maybe that's the problem. Men like that always see me as a prize. You don't. You just see me as Amelia." The words hit him like a blow. He turned his face away, but he couldn't hide the way his chest rose sharply. Later that night, when Amelia dropped him near the small street that led to his apartment, David lingered by her car. "Thank you," he said, his voice low. "For tonight." She tilted her head, studying him. "You don't have to thank me. I enjoyed it." He hesitated, then asked, "What will people say when they see you with me again?" Amelia's eyes softened, but her voice was steady. "I don't care what they say. Do you?" David didn't answer. He simply stepped back, his hand brushing the car lightly, and watched as she drove away into the night. In that moment, under the dim streetlight, David Okoro realized something he wasn't ready to admit. He was already in danger. Amelia told herself she would keep it casual. 1 or 2 outings, nothing serious. But one outing became 3, then 5, then more. Before long, her phone carried David's number like a secret flame, lighting up her evenings with short calls that stretched into hours. They met where the city couldn't follow them. Sometimes it was at the suya stand, sometimes a quiet walk at the park when the crowd had thinned. Once, he took her to a small bookshop tucked inside Yaba, a place she would never have discovered on her own. "You read?" she teased as he picked up a tattered Chinua Achebe novel. David's lips quivered into a smile. "Books don't need money, Amelia. It only needs patience." And she laughed until her ribs hurt. The more time she spent with him, the more she discovered layers that surprised her. He spoke softly most of the time, but his opinions were sharp. He could talk about politics, about football, about the dignity of labor, and even though his English carried the rough edge of Ajagunal, his words carried weight. Sometimes, when they sat side by side on a wooden bench, she forgot about the huge difference between their worlds. He made her feel seen, not as the wealthy Amelia Johnson, not as the high-flying project head, but as a woman who could laugh over roasted corn and complain about Lagos traffic without judgment. It was Sunday afternoon at her parents' home in Acadia, and Amelia had just finished eating pounded yam with her mother when the conversation shifted, as it always did. Her father, seated in his armchair with his glasses low on his nose, looking up from his newspaper, he said, "Amelia, you are not a child anymore. You are 32. All your friends are married. Some of them already have children. When will it be your turn?" Amelia sighed, forcing a polite smile. "Daddy, I am not in a rush. Marriage will come when it comes." Her mother shook her head, filling her glass cup with some orange juice. "Not like this. You are too relaxed. Don't forget that a woman's time is not endless. You have money, yes. You have your career, yes. But all these things mean nothing if you don't build a home." Amelia leaned back, her appetite gone by now. "So my whole life means nothing because I don't have a husband. You know that is not what I mean," her mother said, her tone soft but firm. "When you want to marry a man who will carry your weight. Someone who is established, someone who can provide for you. Not some." She stopped herself, but Amelia caught the hesitation. "Not what, Mama?" Her father's eyes peered over his glasses. "Not a man beneath you, Amelia." The words landed like stones. That evening, Amelia met Nkechi at their usual cafe in Lekki. Her friend was already waiting, scrolling through her phone with nails painted a violent shade of red. "Amelia," Nkechi exclaimed as soon as she sat down. "You look so good. It must be love that is making your skin glow." Amelia rolled her eyes. "Must everything be about a man?" "Yes," Nkechi said bluntly. "At this stage, yes. And don't pretend, my dear. I can tell from your voice these days. There's someone. Who is he?" Amelia hesitated. Then, she said quietly, "His name is David." Nkechi's eyes narrowed with amusement. "David? What does David do?" "He works at a restaurant," Amelia said carefully. "Oh, a chef?" Nkechi asked. "No, a doorman," Amelia replied. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through thin air. Nkechi set her phone down, folded her arms, and leaned in. "Amelia, have you lost your mind? He is very kind, and honest, and different." Amelia defended. "Different?" Nkechi scoffed. "Of course he's different. He is poor. You, Amelia Johnson, with a man who opens doors for a living? A man who cannot even afford the kind of food you eat? How will he take care of you when you marry him? Or are you going to be the man in the marriage? Do you want people to laugh at you?" Amelia's chest tightened, but she forced her voice steady. "I don't care what people think. You will care when the respect you enjoy now disappears," Nkechi fired back. "Listen to me, Amelia. Love is sweet, but poverty will squeeze it out of your throat. Don't let your feelings blind you." Amelia looked out the cafe window, her throat burning. Outside, cars hissed past on wet asphalt, people carrying on with their lives, oblivious to the battle in her chest. She could hear the voices of her parents, her friend, society itself, all chanting the same warning: don't go down. Don't reduce yourself. But when she closed her eyes, she saw David's face in the rain, heard his voice steady and sure. "I don't want your money. Just be safe." And she wondered, maybe for the first time, if love was worth defying the whole world. One night, after their usual lovey-dovey date, Amelia offered to drive David home. As they got close to his area, he shifted uncomfortably in his seat as they pulled into the narrow street where he lived. The children playing football stopped to stare, and a few neighbors whispered, pointing at the sleek SUV. "You shouldn't come here," he muttered. "Why not?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. He clenched his jaw. "Because you don't belong here. People will think weird things." Amelia reached for his hand, squeezing lightly. "David, let them think what they want." But his fingers stiffened under hers. Another time, she surprised him with a new shirt, neatly folded, still fresh from the boutique. "Hey love, I saw this and thought of you," she said, smiling. Instead of joy, she saw something wicked in his eyes. He accepted it with a muttered, "Thank you." But the rest of the evening, he was quieter, his pride warring with gratitude. Still, none of it was enough to scare her away. The sweetness between them overshadowed the shadows. She loved how his laughter came from deep in his chest. She loved how he looked at her like she was not a prize, but a person. She loved him. David's proposal to Amelia was not scripted, not the kind of thing that ended up on Instagram with balloons and roses. David was not that kind of man. It happened on a quiet evening after work. Amelia had insisted they meet at the small bookshop in Yabo again. The shopkeeper knew them by now and had left them alone in the back corner. She was flipping through a poetry collection when she looked up and found David staring at her with an intensity that made her heart stutter. "What is it?" she asked, smiling at him. He took a deep breath, his rough fingers brushing over the edge of the table. "I don't have much, Amelia. You know that. But if you will let me, I want to be the man standing beside you for the rest of your life." For a moment, the room held its breath. His words were simple, stripped bare of flourishes, but they carried a sincerity that pierced straight into her chest. "Yes," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. "Yes, David." The next day, Amelia went to her parents' house to share the good news with them. Her parents were less than thrilled. Her mother pressed her lips tightly when Amelia showed her the modest silver ring. Her father simply sighed, folding his newspaper. "Amelia," he said slowly, "marriage is not only about love. It's about balance. Are you sure this is the balance you want?" "I'm sure, Daddy," she replied, her voice steady even though her stomach twisted. That weekend, she met up with Nkechi to share the good news with her. Nkechi, looking appalled, said harshly, "So this is it? A doorman? Amelia, be serious. You are going to fund your own wedding? Buy your own ring? Don't deceive yourself. This man will drown you." But Amelia brushed it all aside. Love was enough for her, and she was determined to prove them wrong. And soon, despite the warnings, despite the whispers, Amelia made her choice. She introduced David, her fiancé, to her parents. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. Her mother sat with a tight smile. Her father adjusted his glasses 3 times, and Amelia knew what they were all thinking. But she didn't flinch. She looked at David, at his nervous hands folded neatly on his lap, at the sweat beading on his forehead, and she said firmly, "This is the man I love and will marry." Her parents exchanged a look, and in that moment, Amelia understood that nothing she could say would change their minds. But she also knew nothing they could say would change hers. The wedding day arrived on a bright December morning. The church overflowed with people, some genuinely happy, others there for gossip. Amelia walked down the aisle in lace and satin, her smile radiant, her heart pounding with certainty. David stood at the altar in a well-tailored suit Amelia had secretly paid for. He looked handsome, but beneath his smile, his jaw was tight. He could feel the weight of the whispers around him. "That's the man? She must have been really desperate. Look at her father's face. He is not pleased with his daughter's decision." When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Amelia kissed David with the joy of a woman who believed she had won in life. David held her, his arms firm, his eyes closed too tightly, as though he was trying to silence the noise inside his head. The reception was a feast. Music boomed, champagne flowed, and Amelia's friends danced until their belly tilted. David's own family, his mother and younger siblings, looked around in awe at the luxury, as they were not used to such extravagance. But between the laughter and the clinking glasses, small things happened. When a guest toasted to Amelia's career, calling her a woman of substance, David's smile faltered. When her uncle joked about how David had married up, David's hand clenched around his glass until his knuckles turned gray. Amelia noticed, but she chose to ignore it, choosing instead to lean against him, whispering, "We made it, my love." And for a fleeting moment, David let himself believe her. He smiled down at his bride, convincing himself he could silence the storm inside his chest. The first months of marriage were golden. At least, that was how Amelia chose to remember them. They laughed easily, finding joy in the simplest things. On Saturday mornings, David would make her breakfast, yam and egg sauce, sometimes akara bought from the woman down the street. He insisted on serving her, placing the plate in front of her with a proud grin. "You will get used to my cooking," he would tease. "And you will get used to me correcting your salt." She would fire back, laughing until tears rolled down her cheeks. At night, they lay tangled in each other's arms, whispering about their dreams. Amelia spoke of expanding her career, traveling more, perhaps even starting a side business. David spoke of one day leaving his job as a doorman and opening his own car workshop. In those moments, their dreams knitted together like threads of the same fabric. But Lagos life was relentless. The bills arrived, rent for their modest flat in Surulere, electricity, groceries, fuel. David's salary from the restaurant barely covered transportation, let alone expenses. Amelia filled the gaps without complaint, swiping her card for furniture, utilities, even the generator they needed when NEPA failed. At first, David accepted it with a quiet shame. But shame, when left too long, curdles into something darker. One evening, as Amelia returned from work, she found him sitting on the balcony, his face hard. "You bought a new blender," he said flatly, gesturing at the box on the table. "Yes," she replied, a little surprised. "The old one was spoilt." "With your money?" he questioned. She frowned, setting down her handbag. "Our money, David. It's not a competition." His jaw tightened. "It feels like you are doing charity." She sighed. "David, no. It's love. We're building together." But his eyes told her he didn't believe it. The cracks in their marriage began to form, and it widened in small ways. At family gatherings, people praised Amelia, her latest promotion, her sleek car, or her new projects. David stood beside her, smiling stiffly, the words her and hers ringing in his ears like insults. At church, when ushers directed Amelia to the front with the women of substance, David hung back, invisible, and late at night, when the house was quiet, he stared at the ceiling, a bitter thought gnawing at him. She is the man of this marriage, not me, Amelia always noticed. But she chose to smother the tension with affection. She kissed his forehead when he sulked. She cooked his favorite meals. She whispered, "I'm proud of you," even when his eyes turned away. But love, she was beginning to realize, could not silence pride. And David's pride was no longer just bruised. It was slowly hardening into resentment. It began with the car. Amelia had not meant for it to be a big deal. Her old SUV had served her well, but after too many breakdowns, she decided it was time for a change. On a Saturday morning, she drove home in a sleek silver Prado, the kind that purred like a cat and gleamed even under harmattan dust. Neighbors gathered almost immediately. Children pointed and clapped, adults nodded approvingly, voices rising in admiration. "Ah, Mrs. Johnson. Congratulations, oh. This your car fit shame, even men. You are really blessed, Amelia." She smiled graciously, waving, her heart light. But when she turned to look for David, she found him standing apart, his hands shoved into his pockets, his face unreadable. That night, he barely spoke during dinner. "You don't like it?" she asked gently. "It's fine," he muttered, pushing rice around his plate. "David," she pressed. "Talk to me." He looked up, his eyes dark. "Do you realize not one person congratulated me today? Not one. It was all you. As if I don't exist." Amelia set down her fork, taken aback. "But it's just a car." "No," he snapped. "It's not just a car. It's what it represents. They see you, Amelia. Only you. I am just your shadow." She reached across the table, touching his hand. "You are not my shadow, David. You are my husband." But he slipped his hand away. The whispers followed him everywhere. At the barber shop, men laughed under their breath when Amelia dropped him off in the new Prado. At church, one usher joked, "Brother David, your wife day show us say na she be oga for house." He forced a smile, but inside, humiliation burned him like acid. That evening, as Amelia prepared dinner, he stood by the doorway watching her. "You don't see it, do you?" he said quietly. "See what?" she asked, turning. "How everyone treats me. Like I'm nothing. Like I'm living in your shadow. Even your parents look at me like I don't deserve you." Amelia wiped her hands on a towel, walking to him. "David, people will always talk. Let them. What matters is us." But his eyes were cold. "It's easy for you to say because you're the one they praise." The jealousy did not roar all at once. It whispered. In the way he stiffened when her phone buzzed late at night with work emails. With the way he frowned when her colleagues called her boss lady. The way his smile never reached his eyes whenever people praised her. And slowly, silently, David began to believe the one lie that would poison everything. She is not my wife. I am her burden. Amelia's career had just reached another high. Her company had landed a major contract with an international client. and she had been chosen to lead the presentation. For days, she poured herself into the work. She spent long nights hunched over slides. She received endless phone calls from her team, and she had neat stacks of documents on her study table. "This one is big, David," she told him one evening, her eyes glowing. "If it goes well, it could change everything. Not just for me, for us." She meant it. In her mind, us included him. But in David's ears, us always sounded like you and your shadow. On the morning of the presentation, Amelia woke up before dawn. She dressed carefully in a cream blouse and navy skirt, her makeup subtle but flawless. She kissed David lightly on the cheek as he sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. "Wish me luck," she whispered. He grunted something that was supposed to be encouragement, but his eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Amelia brushed it off and hurried to the car, her documents neatly packed in the brown leather folder she had left on the dining table the night before. It wasn't until she reached the boardroom hours later, standing before a dozen foreign delegates, that she realized something was wrong. Her folder was gone. She unzipped her bag once, then twice. Panic clawed at her chest. The slides on her laptop were there, but the signed contracts, the reference sheets, the data she needed, all were missing. "Mrs. Johnson?" one of the delegates prompted. She froze, her polished composure disappearing for the first time in years. Back in Surrey, David sat alone in the living room, staring at the brown leather folder he had slipped into the bottom drawer of their wardrobe. His jaw was clenched, his chest rising and falling with something he didn't want to name. It wasn't that he wanted her to fail, or so he told himself. He just wanted her to need him, to see that without him, she could stumble. But even as he sat there, listening to the quiet hum of the fridge, a sick satisfaction curled in his gut. Amelia stood in that boardroom, her hands trembling against the polished oak table, the room spinning with the weight of disappointed eyes. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a question kept popping up. How could this have happened? And for the first time since she met David in the rain, a seed of doubt lodged itself in her chest. Please subscribe and stay tuned for the next part.